We are here tonight to talk about marketing. If you tuned in last week, welcome back. If you missed last week, so last week we talked all about pricing. We talked about the importance of pricing and how to make sure that you're pricing correctly and all those different things. But the problem with trying to figure out your pricing comes down to if and when you determine, okay, this is the price that I want to charge, the next step is, okay, well, how do I get people to pay me that much? Or how do I book that many weddings or whatever? And that's where marketing comes into play. So we want to talk about that because the off season, honestly, is where a lot of your marketing happens. It's an important time to be paying attention to marketing. Mm-hmm. And marketing it's one of those things where obviously you can go to school for marketing. There's all different sorts of like schools of thought when it comes to marketing, but we personally have never really spent money on like traditional advertising or traditional marketing.
Like we never took out an ad in a magazine.
Right. Right. We've never really paid for like traditional
wedding wire.
Traditional advertising. Yeah, I tried the Knot one time when I was in college. It didn't really work out. I didn't get any leads. It was just not really right for us. But that's a question we get asked a lot is, okay, if you're not paying for marketing, if you're not paying for whatever, then how are you attracting brides? How can if I want to raise my prices, how can I be attracting new brides? If I have a lull in bookings or something like that, what can I do to increase my probability of getting bookings? All those different things. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk all about marketing.
So if you're just tuning in, we're talking about marketing in the off season, and we're going to kind of like lead up to it. We're going to kind of chat about like the things that you need to think about before you start your actual marketing. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is how are you going to run your business? You have to pay attention.
Oh.
Okay. So you're going to talk about like how you're going to run your business and who is your ideal client. So if you're thinking about if you're going to run your business personally, like Ty and I run our business very personally. Our face is like our brand. We are very connected. Like the image of our business is very connected to us. I won't go as far to say as like one and the same, but it's very connected. So you need to think about like who is your ideal client? Who are you targeting? Who are you trying to reach? And then what do you have to offer them? So if you think about it like in terms of like, okay, practically, like what does that mean? For example, we're running a personal brand. So 9 times out of 10, when somebody inquires with us, they want to book us for us. They probably love our work. They're attracted to our work. They appreciate what we have to offer, but they're most attractive to us, and they relate to us in some way. So across all of our marketing fronts on our social media, on the blog, it's very personal. We share our personal life. We share personally like what's happening. People like know our relationship because we show that online. So that is like our ideal client is attracted to us.
Our ideal client is somebody who wants to have that personal relationship with us, right? Not everybody out there is going to want to have a personal relationship with their wedding vendors. They're just not, right? But there are certain people who do. And those brides that do, that want that personal relationship, that love following us on Instagram, that love knowing about our lives, that love just following along, those are the brides who we're reaching out specifically to.
Right. So if you don't want to run a personal brand, that's totally fine. Before you start marketing, you just need to decide, like, okay, so like, am I going to, like, do I want to show up to a wedding and shoot the wedding, go home, edit the wedding, and, like, that be done? Or do I want to have a personal relationship with my client? Like, am I going to follow them online? And I'm going to, like, interact with, like, them on social media as it's leading up to their wedding? Like, are they going to know me when I show up and they're going to know, like, our relationship? Or they're going to know, like, who your second shooters are or if you're shooting alone? Like, all those things. That's just something that you want to decide before you move into the marketing sphere so you kind of know, like, what like your home base and like what you're marketing towards. Okay, so one thing that might be helpful in this is I'm gonna show you this quote, and it's called your onlyness factor. So this comes from Nyla Merchant in the book The Power of Onlyness. And she says, onlyness is a term I coined back in 2011 to capture an economic shift I was observing. It points to how value creation happens today. You stand in a spot in the world only you stand in, a function of your distinct history, experience, visions, and hopes. From this spot, you have fresh takes and ideas, and now that you can scale and realize ideas and connectedness with others who care about the same thing, you have the power to dent the world, hence onlyness. So the idea of onlyness is that there's only one you, okay? And only you can do what you were given to do. you're the only one who can do what you were gifted to do, and nobody else can do that. So for example, in running a personal brand, like that is our onlyness factor. Like our exact being is our onlyness factor because we're the only people who can be us. There's nobody else that can be us. Your onlyness factor can be a variety of things. For some of you, it might be your storytelling is your onlyness factor. Like there's nobody out there that can tell stories like you. Maybe it's color grading or like your style of editing. Like when somebody sees your film floating around online, and they might immediately know like, oh, I know exactly whose film that is. That can be your onlyness factor. Another thing that I was thinking about is there are some filmmakers out there in the world who are also musicians, and so they create the audio, the track that's running in the background. They create that for each of their films, so that could be your onlyness factor. And you know that you're targeting a specific audience because that person is probably interested in music, and so they probably really like that you're writing your own music for their film. They're like really connected to that and into that. So your onlyness factor is kind of what sets you apart and makes you unique in comparison to like the thousands of other filmmakers in the world. So when you're thinking about this, like what do you have that's different apart from everyone else, and how can you weave that in every aspect of your brand?
So this is going to be beyond even just like, you can say obviously like storytelling, right? So say like that's something that we also talk about. Like we have story driven films. That's something that's important to us to put out there. But there's lots of other filmmakers who have story-driven films. So it's a combination of figuring out what you are gifted in, right? And also figuring out, like we talked about, what your ideal client, who your ideal client is, and what they value. And something that's interesting is that you're going to have to talk to, the reason why it's important to figure this out is because you need to talk to these different people in ways that you can show your value, right? As filmmakers, we talked about this last week, when it comes to pricing, we are pricing our work on something that doesn't have intrinsic value, doesn't have like physical value necessarily, but it has a lot of emotional value, and it has a lot of what's a good word, Ash? It has a lot of, like, we are the ones who are determining the value, right? The value is in the eyes of the beholder. So it's really important that we're showing the value that we have. We're showing the value of your work to them in a way that they can appreciate. Now, the way I can relate to this, and hopefully you can relate to it too, is if you're thinking of this in terms of cars, right? So if you're trying to sell cars to somebody, right, depending on who your target audience is, you're going to talk about those cars in very specific ways, right? If you're trying to sell a minivan, right, you're going to talk about the minivan and the specs and the value of that minivan in ways that are very different than if you're trying to sell a pickup truck, for example, right? If you're trying to sell a minivan, you're trying to show you the value of the minivan is that there are sliding doors, so it's easy to get your kids in and out. There's tons of cargo space to hold all of your things. The latch moves automatically. If your hands are full of whatever, all of your kids, you can open the latch without having to use your hands, right? These are the types of things that people who are interested in buying minivans find valuable, right? There's value to them because it's most likely somebody who has kids, right? So you want to speak to them in a way that shows the value of that car. Whereas for somebody who has, get a pickup truck, right? They're going to care about the power and the torque and the durability, right? All these different things that you hear in the truck commercials, right, are very different than the way that you hear in the minivan commercials. So what does this have to do with wedding filmmaking? Well, until you can figure out who your target audience is, you're going to have a really hard time speaking to them directly, right? So if you are charging, say, over $5,000 for your wedding films, right, you are speaking to a very specific audience of people who have the ability to afford $5,000 wedding films, right? And what they value is probably different than somebody who's only looking to spend $1,500 on their wedding films. So what you need to figure out how you can do is, first of all, you need to get in front of the right people, right? So if you're advertising for the minivan, right, you're not going to be advertising that in like Tough Mud magazine, right? That's just not really where you're going to be. You're going to advertise for your minivan in some sort of a parenting magazine or on parenting websites or something like that where you know parents are going to be looking. Same thing, if you're trying to promote your $5,000 wedding films and you're only getting in front of the eyes of people who can afford $1,200, it doesn't matter how great your films are. It doesn't matter how well you're able to speak about them, right? You're not reaching the right audience, right? And then once you do reach that audience, right, once you are getting in front of the right eyes, then you still need to make sure that you're speaking to them about things that they care about, right? So for us, when we talk about our wedding films, the things that we always emphasize, we talk about story, our story, we talk about legacy. When we talk to couples, we ask about their stories. Everything that we do, we're showing them that we value story because we want to find people who also value story. But we're not going to be talking to them about we don't come to them and we talk to them about the number of lenses that we have, or the quality of our work, or the, like the 4K, or the this or the that, or the bit rate, or any of those other things, because that's not the thing that these people value, right? These people that we're trying to reach, they value that connection and they value that storytelling. So that's what we're going to talk to them about. So it all comes down to figuring out what that value is and speaking the right language to the people who need to hear it. And
I think it's important to remember too that like our onlyness factor might not be your onlyness factor, and it doesn't have to translate directly. Like, of course, everyone has an element of storytelling in their wedding films, because you're relaying an event that happened that was like purposely driven by story. But it might look different for you. Like, you might not use time shifting as much. It might be like straight through the wedding day. You might not like incorporate audio in the same ways that we will, or whatever. You know what I mean? But you just have to like really hone in on that, and then you want that to translate across your brand 100%, like from your social media all the way to your website copy, all the way to like if you have an email list and you're sending out emails, you want it to translate all the way across.
Yes. Are we going to go to that part now?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to talk about this at all, the our onlyness factor, or did we kind of already talk about that?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Okay. So that's kind of like the premise. So the first thing you need to do before you can start marketing yourself, before you can go out there and you can start selling yourself, is you need to figure out what you have to offer, what value you bring to the table, whatever that may be, your onlyness factor, and you need to figure out who your ideal client is and what they see as valuable, right? Until you can pair up those two things, until you can speak those two things and know exactly what they are, you're going to have a really hard time targeting your marketing and being very specific, okay? So that's the first step. So before you do anything else, that's what we want to make sure that we kind of lead with that. So figure out those two things. Okay. The next thing we're going to go into the three tips that you can use for marketing in the off season. And we want to make sure that we're looking at these different tips through the lens of our target audience and their value, okay? So the first one that we're going to talk about is going to be to evaluate your online presence, which is kind of what Ash was just talking about. So one thing that I think is, when we've done this a lot over the years, this is something that's really important to do almost every off season, but doing this pretty frequently would be to evaluate every part of, honestly, of your online presence and really your entire process, right? Because we want to make sure that we're looking at it through the lens, again, of our ideal client, whoever that is, whatever you've determined is the person who's your ideal client. Is your online presence speaking to that person in every aspect, right? Because we want to make it so that wherever anybody finds you, whether that be on your social media, if that be they find your website directly, if they find your blog, if they hear about you from a friend, right? We want all of these things ideally to kind of line up and to all point back to that one thing that is unique about you. So again, for us, that has to do with our storytelling, that has to do with the two of us and just having that personal connection, right? So our goal would be for all of our different, everywhere that we have an online presence, like Ash said, between emails, social media, everything, that everything would line up and mesh with our ideal client, their values, what they view as important, and what we bring to the table that makes us unique. If you can have both of those things across all of your social media, then you're doing a really good job. So some places you might want to start when it comes to evaluating is going to be, one is just going to be your branding, right? So your branding is so much more than just your logo and your fonts and your colors and all those things. Your branding is really just everything, the essence of who you are and the way that you are perceived online. So that comes down to the word choice that you use, the types of photos you post on Instagram and social media, how you talk about yourself, how you talk about your business. All of these different things are all a huge contributing factor to your brand, right?
And even like your voice. Like if you are reaching a high-end client and you are like dropping cuss words every other word on your Instagram, they might not relate to you in that way, especially if they meet you in person and you seem really professional and like you do not talk like that. You might be sending mixed messages as far as like what who you are and like kind of how you are in person. Obviously, like, you know, your personal Instagram is like your personal self. There's also a level of professionalism if you're opening up that space for clients to like first connect with you. We always say like perception is everything. And so it's really hard to get someone to get in front of you, whether without being like in an online sphere of some way, unless you're doing like a Google Hangout or something like that. But perception is everything. So what they see, like what is their first impression of you is going to be like what they think about you to be true.
Right. And you want to think about, I mean, it's hard because we don't want to say like don't have a personal Instagram and don't be yourself, but you never know where someone's going to find you, and you want everything that you do should point back to this level of professionalism. So for us, that has looked like over the years, as our prices have changed and gone up, our logo has become more and more sophisticated to match that, right? So when we first started out, it was just me. When we got married, we moved to the Harrington Weddings logo back in 2013, which is very playful and not very high end, right? It was we thought it was fun, and I made this myself. Admittedly, but you know, it doesn't necessarily scream high end, but at the time it worked, right? And then as we were raising our price a little more, we moved to our logo in 2015, which is a little bit more sophisticated, but we had some colors in there, and it still wasn't super high end. And as we moved into more, the higher tier of pricing, you can see that our logo has just become more and more sophisticated to match the clientele that we're trying to reach.
Yeah. People always ask us if, like, because we kind of went through this, like, 2-year shift. If, like, 2019's coming around, like, what are we going to do? I think this logo is here to stay.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where you want to just continue to evolve. But so your branding, you want to look at your branding and make sure, say, does my branding, the way that everything is laid out in my online presence, is this going to speak well to my target audience, whoever that might be? The second thing you want to look at is going to be your website. Again, the wording that you use, the voice that you use, this is going to be a common theme. So for us, last year we decided to hire a copywriter because we had a hard time. We write well, but it's hard to write about yourself. So we hired a copywriter, and that was one of the best things that we ever did. It just gives so much more. They're able to craft the words in a way that reflect your brand so much better than you probably ever could. So that was really, really crucial for us. And then a really big thing about people's websites that I think it's often overlooked is the films that you have on your website, right? So we always say whatever you put out, as far as the films that you show, is what you're going to get back. So if you love shooting mountain elopements, right? That's something that's what you really want to shoot. That's what you're passionate about. But on your website, all you have are like city ballroom type weddings, right? You're probably not going to be attracting the mountain elopement couples, right? And you want to be aware of that. So, and if you absolutely hate city weddings, but you just keep putting them on your website, you're going to keep attracting people that are like that. So what I always say is like, figure out like the weddings that you put on your actual website. I'm not talking about blogging. We blog all of our weddings, but on the actual website, you want to have strategy behind why those are out there. So for us, we try and only feature weddings on our website that either reflect our style, they look very much like us, or more importantly, that have a lot of really great storytelling elements such as personal vows, personal notes, and those types of things. Because those are the things that are our favorite thing to do, and those are what makes our favorite types of films. You may have a really high-end wedding that was beautiful and gorgeous from like a visual standpoint, but if they didn't have those personal touches, that's not necessarily what we want. We love those personal touches. That's our favorite thing. So we want to highlight those because then we'll find more people who value those things as well. So be really aware of the weddings in the films that you do have on your website because it really reflects a lot back on you. And remember that you're always going to be evaluated and judged, for lack of a better word, not necessarily by the best film on your website, but by the worst film on your website, right? So quality over quantity is definitely the name of the game here. You don't want to have, just because you've shot 30 weddings in your life doesn't mean you want to have 30 films on your website, right? Because they're going to find the worst one and think, man, I could have this. Even if it was 5 years ago, right? You don't want them to even to see that, right? Just put the best of the best of the best and put out what you want to get back.
And it's not always about, like Ty just said, quality. Like, it's not like, oh, if I have 30 weddings, they'll think I'm really awesome because I've shot a lot of weddings.
Right. That's not how it works.
Not necessarily.
Right. So you want to make sure that you only show your absolute best work, and that'll help attract more people, right? I'm just going to fly through the rest of these. So like social media, paying attention to your social media, again, making sure that the voice that you have on your website matches the way that you speak on social media. Our friends, Happy Camper Films, they do a really fantastic job of this. If you follow them on Instagram, their captions are always really captivating. They talk about the couple's story. They get like very emotional, like in the captions of their Instagram posts about their films. And when you watch their films, it matches up with the way that they speak about them in the Instagram caption. And then if you go on their website, it's just a continuation more of the same, right? And I'm going to use them as an example again because I think they do a really awesome job. And if you look at their films, right, they have a very distinct coloring, like their color grading that they do on their films is very distinct to them, and it looks amazing. But all of their Instagram posts also use a similar type of look. I don't know if they might actually be using the same one because they're awesome like that, but it definitely all has a very cohesive look. If you have like a very dark and moody and kind of like raised blacks look in your films, but all of your Instagram posts are like bright and airy and poppy and like don't look anything alike, or there's a little bit of a disconnect there, right? You want it all to be as cohesive as possible. Look at your email correspondence, right? Any one of these little things, if there happens to be like a little, like a nick in the chain, what's the right word? A missing link.
A kink?
In the chain, right? This could be the difference between someone booking you and someone not booking you, right? And you want to go through the entire process and just think, okay, if I was a prospective bride who's looking to spend X amount of money on a wedding film, how would I evaluate this? How would I read into this? Something as simple as, for us, right, our email signature, Ash is very personal in her email signatures. For girls, she uses like a little heart. She says y'all in all her emails, right? So our email, just the way that she speaks in her emails, reflects the way that we run our business. But if you're trying to run a really super high end, or you want to feel like you're a very like legit established wedding film company, you want to speak in that way. You want your signature to reflect that. All these little things. So the whole point of this whole section is to just go evaluate everything. I take a big step back and look at all your different things and think, if my ideal bride, like the bride who I'd want to book for every single wedding for the rest of my career, were to find this Instagram photo or read this email, would it be attractive to them, or would it be a repellent to them, right? And you want everything to be feeding into your brand, speaking to your value, and attracting your ideal client. Anything to add to that, Ash?
No, that's great.
Perfect. Okay. So that's the first thing you should do.
Wait. One thing. Okay, so I am very intentional. Okay, so our brand is really my voice. So I communicate all through the email. The majority of the social media is me. So it would feel not right if Ty wrote copy. Does that make sense? So my voice is channeled in every way. I will say, I create leading lines because I want to keep people clicking and not just have them show up, click on one thing, and leave. So I won't put the full thing out there. So for example, I'll just use one example, like on my Instagram profile. If you look in my bio, I'm not very direct. Like, I don't just come out and say like, oh, I wear a lot of beige. Like, I say a lover of neutral. Or I don't just say like, I love my husband. Like, I say low-key obsessed with my hubs, and then I at Tyler Harrington. So I want to keep people clicking because I want them to stay engaged. And so if they're engaged on my Instagram and they're like, I wonder what she means by that, they'll see it like pointing, like they'll see it through my feed, but then they'll also might be more interested to click over to our website to continue exploring, which might make them sign up for our email list, like all those things. You just want to keep them engaged. So if you come out and say everything straight out, they might just like get all the information that they need and leave. But I'm going to create leading lines that keeps them questioning and keep them wanting more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then, so when it comes to marketing, and like we talked about, we don't pay for traditional marketing, but our marketing strategy really over the years has been through word of mouth. And really, I mean, our goal is to create as many different areas for people to find us, for our ideal bride to find us as possible. So for us, the main ways that people find us, our main like lead generation is going to be from other vendors, right? Other photographers we work with, other planners in the industry, just like making connections with the people who are going to be in contact with the brides again, that are going to be able to afford us and who value what we value. Through our past brides, right? Them just like raving about us and telling their friends and giving them as good of a client experience as possible. Through our social media, right? Being personal, connecting with people in that way. Through our website, right? So all these different people, everything leads back to your website, which is why I think your website is super important, because almost all roads lead back to your website.
That's
right?
where your inquiry usually comes through.
All these things ultimately are pointing back to your website, whether it's social media, a friend, everybody. Facebook, whatever. Everything is kind of pointing back to your website. So your website needs to be the home base. It needs to be the ultimate reflection of who you are and what you want to do. And I feel like sometimes we get focused on social media and the quality of our films and all these other things. And then our website, we just kind of forget about it. And someone sees a film like, oh, this is an amazing film, I love it. And they go to our website, and our website doesn't say anything about us. They can't find any information. It's very dry. It doesn't.
Or that's where the disconnect happens.
Right.
They're immediately like,
or it just looks old or outdated or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And there's this disconnect between like, wow, this film looks like it's worth $5,000, but this website doesn't. So I don't know which one to believe, and there's that disconnect there. So the objective is to make sure that all of the areas are all pointing back to the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Point number 2 is going to be to repurpose your content. Okay. So what does this mean? So we all know that in the off season, it can be a little bit of a dry time for work, right? We haven't shot a wedding in a few weeks, maybe months, and the regular amount of like our normal wedding content isn't there as easily. So we have to get a little bit more creative. So just trying to figure out ways in the off season to continue to stay in people's news feeds, to stay on top of people's minds, and to just be attracting brides during the time, which is primarily the booking time, right? The off season, even though we're not shooting weddings, is the primary time where people are booking and getting engaged. So you want to make sure that you're able to, you don't want to look dead online, and you want to be as relevant as possible. So what are some good ways that people can do that?
If you're a blogger and like you have a blog that's on your website, just keep it updated. That might look like posting once a week, but you want to keep it somewhat regular with content. It could be content that you're sharing with potential brides as far as like, 3 tips in planning. Yeah, 3 tips in planning a wedding timeline, or like 5 ways to encourage your future spouse to write a note or something like that. Those obviously were like 100% made up all the time.
Well, yeah.
Or just like repurposing content as far as like films that you have. You could do like a montage of like the best first dances of 2017, or a montage of like the best notes or something like that. Just like being intentional about repurposing your content so that you don't look dead online, and you don't have to force it, but you can also still stay top of mind for people.
And you want to think, again, be thinking about your ideal client. What is something that they would be searching for? If they were looking for a videographer for their wedding, they're looking for a filmmaker for their wedding, what are they going to be searching for online, right? We have one blog post that Ash wrote about writing notes, because again, writing notes is really important for us. We love when people write notes in our films. She wrote this blog post, and we get over 100 site views a day.
Pause. I will say, when I wrote this blog post, Ty told me that it was dumb.
No, that was a different blog post.
No. That was the blog post.
No, that was
and it is
that
our
was the one about
most
speeches.
viewed blog post every day.
Every day, there's like over 100 views on this blog post because people are finding us online. So again, that's another way. Like SEO is another way that we're getting people to find our website. The whole objective, again, is to get in front of your ideal client. All right, for us, figuring out where our ideal client hangs out and trying to attract them. So again, if you think, again, for us, writing notes is really important. So making content around writing notes, because if someone who values that might be searching wedding film with really amazing personal notes, right? Something like that. If that's somewhere in the title, you've got a good chance of popping up.
Actually, I will say that the most searched keyword is wedding day love note, or writing or note to future spouse. And I have that SEO, like I have those keywords plugged into my blog post, which makes us pop up.
Right. So that's just another thing that you can do to be repurposing content in the off season strategically in a way that's going to reach your ideal client, and is just, again, another way to generate people, more eyes on you, more eyes on your site, more eyes on what you have going on, right? So repurposing content can be really valuable. And again, blogging, I know blogging is sort of like a dying art. We don't blog nearly as much as we used to, but there's definitely value to it from an SEO standpoint and just from a appearing alive on the internet standpoint. So don't give up on blogging. You don't have to blog every single day, but just putting out content out there on a regular basis that you think that your ideal client will be looking for is a really great way to spend your off season and ways to market yourself in new ways. Yeah. Okay. So the first point was to evaluate your whole online presence and make sure that you're everything you have is speaking directly to your ideal client. The second thing is repurpose your content in a way that's going to, again, speak to your ideal client and get you in front of more eyes of people who are your ideal client. And the third thing is going to be networking. Okay, networking has been huge for us ever since we moved to Virginia, honestly. I started the business when I was in college, and I went to West Virginia University. So when I first got started, all of my wedding referrals and everything, when we first moved here, we first got married, we're all in West Virginia, and we had no idea, I had no idea how we were going to start getting Virginia weddings, and I was not going to keep driving 5.5 hours back to West Virginia every weekend to shoot weddings. It just wasn't going to be possible. So one of the best things that we did was we got involved in some local, at the time it was photographer groups, but there are so many different types of groups that you can get involved in. But it was beyond just like showing up and saying, hey, it was trying to build connections with people, trying to just really just like care about people and really like invest in them and just show that we
really
care
just like
about who they
build
are.
relationships, like building relationship with people without asking, like without wanting something in return. I will say one of the most important things, so one question that we get a lot is people will say like, okay, so should I just reach out to a venue or like one of my favorite planners that I've loved working with, and like should I just say like, hey, I'd love to be on your referral list, can you add me? We always say no. Not as like don't ask, but we say instead it's better to just to show up. So one of our favorite networking groups is Tuesdays Together, which is put on by the Rising Tide Society. And the thing that we love about that is that it's creatives from all different spheres of like influence, whether that's like like wedding planners or artists or photographers, or shop owners, like anything, any type of creative. And it's seriously been so impactful to us because we show up and we say like, hey, this is who we are. And we're able to like show ourselves in person. And then once we build that relationship with them, we can say, hey, we do video. And like, if you ever need anything as far as video goes, like let us know. And then that's when the relationship goes to the next level. They're more likely to refer you after that because they already have an established relationship. They're probably followed you online, connected to your work in some way.
Yeah, and it doesn't always necessarily mean you're doing like promo films for them for free or stuff like that. But for us, I mean, one of our biggest sources of referrals is photographers because we try our best to go out of our way to work well with the photographers, right? So when we shoot a wedding, every time we shoot a wedding with a photographer, our goal is to make their job as easy as possible and make our job as easy as possible and just make the day run really smoothly. And photographers love that because not every videographer out there, filmmaker, whatever, has that mindset, right? So just by being nice to people and going out of your way to care about them and help them carry their stuff on a wedding day, like little things like that can go a really long way to having these photographers being like, man, I want to shoot every wedding with them because that means I'm not shooting with the crazy videographer that I shot with last weekend, right? We all know, I mean, and that's true across the board, right? If you have that same mentality with the planner and the DJ and the photographer and the venue coordinator and literally everybody, and you're just doing little things to help them here and there, it doesn't have to be this crazy gesture.
No, it could be bringing them water
something
if
as simple,
it's hot outside.
Right, yeah, that Ash does it all the time. People love that. Something as simple as like, hey, venue owner, your venue is beautiful. I got a few drone shots that, I just flew my drone. Would it be all right if I sent you 30 seconds of drone shots of your venue, right? Of course they're going to say yes. Everyone loves drone shots, right? And that doesn't take you very much time, but you just built a rapport with this person. They put you on the preferred vendor list, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the off season, though, is when people have the most time where they're available to connect and can network in different ways. And then that even goes beyond just like photographers and stuff, and it goes into filmmakers as well, right? We talked about this last week where if we are booked for a date, instead of just saying like, hey, sorry, we're booked, we go out of our way to post in our referral group to ask around and say like, hey, who's available on this date, and send referrals back to the bride so that they will book one of our friends. And then in return, our friends do the same thing. If they're booked for a day, they'll send the weddings our way. And we've booked a bunch of weddings last year as a direct result from our referral group, and vice versa. We know a ton of people booked weddings that we sent their way, right? And that's just like, again, the more that you can just connect. And the whole mantra of the Rising Tide Society is, the rising tide lifts all boats. And that's the whole mantra, right? So if we can believe that in your area and in your, whatever your neck of the world is, the same thing is true. So so just going out of your way to network with people, to put a name to a face, just be really nice to people. Don't expect anything from them. Offer ways that you can add value to them and just be nice to them. And And again, it's not just like, hey, can I pick your brain
Right.
about X, Y, and Z?
Nobody likes that.
Well, that's not true. Not nobody. But that can't be like the only thing, right? Especially, it depends on who you're talking to and all that kind of stuff. But, yes, Matt Johnson, everyone loves drone shots. That's the quote of 2018. Everyone loves drone shots.
My gosh.
Nobody doesn't love drone shots. So cool.
Right.
Okay, so quick recap. So the first thing you need to do before anything else is you need to figure out who your target audience is. You need to figure out who your ideal client is. And you need to figure out what you have that's valuable that separates you from the guy down the street. Okay? That's the first thing. Then the tips we have for marketing would be, one, to just evaluate your entire online presence and really your just entire client interaction through that lens. Is whatever is all in all those different areas. Are you speaking directly to that person who's your ideal client? Two would be to repurpose old content and just make sure that you're being relevant and being fresh, and you have all this gold stuff, all this great footage. You want to make sure that you're getting it in front of people's eyes. And the third thing would be to network. Just be a nice person, be nice to people, go out of your way to meet people in your area and to care about them, and just, again, go out of your way for them, and they'll go out of your way for you. Anything else, Ash?
That was a great recap, Ty.
Thanks. Cool. Okay, so that's all we have as far as content and stuff goes. Hopefully you guys have some questions. We're going to check out the chat now and see what everyone is saying.
So we'll kick it off with some marketing questions. If you guys have any questions specific to what we just talked about.
So if you guys have questions, please leave them below. Again, they can marketing first, but we'll answer other questions if we have time. So let's see here. Marvin says, what tips do you have for connecting with new couples on a personal level? That's a great question. Do you want to talk about that?
How do you connect with new couples on a personal level?
New couples on a personal level. Yep.
Okay, so I would say, Marvin. Okay, so my question would be, do you mean I'm just
clarification. Just answer it.
I just trying to think how are you sitting in front of them and you're trying to book them? I guess I just don't understand.
So for us, the way we connect with our clients is through a bunch of different ways. One, we just ask them questions, right? We want to have a genuine interest in them and in their lives. So we ask them things like, how did you guys meet? How did you get engaged? What do you do in real life? We just try and
what you mean. Okay.
What do you mean? Yeah.
I get it now.
Those are the types of questions we like to ask them, right? Because we want to know about their lives, right? Because ultimately,
we're telling their
story on a wedding day, and that's really important to us. So for us, it's really just about asking them questions, caring about their lives, and connecting in that way. And then for us, social media is the way that we connect back. They can connect with us.
Yeah.
Is that we put our lives out there in a personal way on social media. Now, we're not sharing our deepest, darkest secrets on social media, and we're not necessarily
it's not everything about our life.
We're not sharing everything, but we're sharing enough that people can feel connected with us. We're sharing
know our
personal,
personalities.
intimate,
Yeah.
not intimate. Intimate's not the right word.
Why did you say that word?
We're sharing things about our lives that people would want to know about. People know how I eat my lunch every day, right? Stuff like that, where people are you would think why does anybody care about that? But you'd be surprised how many people talk to me about the way that I roll my turkey that I eat for lunch, right? And it's something as silly as that, is they can connect with that because they feel oh, I know this person. I feel like I've been following them for years. We've had so many people who've emailed us and I've been following you for years. I know everything about you. And
you roll your turkey.
You have to shoot my wedding, right? And they feel like they know us. So we show up on a wedding day, and it's no longer...
Okay.
What?
Okay,
and it's no longer oh, who are these random strangers? It's oh, this is Ash and Ty. I know so much about them, even if we may not know as much about them. But we do. We try and get to know them as much as we can.
Okay, I will say too is that people love to talk about themselves. They just do. So when you ask them questions about them, they're going to light up, and they're gonna feel so much more invested in the conversation and feel so much better about the conversation when they leave it, knowing that you cared about them, you were interested in them. So just to sum this up, we always ask them about their story, how they got engaged, what they do in everyday life, because those are the things that we're gonna want to know in order to show that side of them through the film. And if we don't ask, we won't know. So that's how we bring it down on a personal level. Okay.
Perfect.
Carla, what questions do you ask yourself to define your ideal client?
Carla,
Great
I'm so glad
question.
you asked that question. Ash,
okay.
Tell them about Mary Margaret.
Okay, so our ideal client, her name is Mary Margaret. She is probably from the South. She loves traditions. She loves family time. And she loves to share her story. Like, it just comes natural to her, and, like, that's her favorite thing in the world. She's probably going to get married on a farm or a plantation, or she could also be married in an exotic location / venue. Does that make sense? So that's Mary Margaret. She's our ideal client. We know everything about her, that she probably, there was a level of, like, probably long distance in her relationship. They met and they, like, emailed back and forth, or, like, Skyped back and forth, or something like that. Because a lot of Mary Margaret's story is a lot of our story. We relate to a lot of people. I can't tell you how many people's weddings that we've shot that online dated, which is so funny because we did not online date, but a lot of our relationship was online because we were long distance for so long.
Yeah, Skype was our BFF.
Yeah.
When we were dating. But yeah, and we, like, you can go as deep with this as you want. You can get kind of, like, weird with it. Like, what kind of a job does she have? What does she do for fun? Those types of things. And the more, like, specific that you can get with it, the more that you can target this person. Because, again, for us, at this point now in our lives, Mary Margaret probably isn't fresh out of college, because people who are fresh out of college most of the time can't pay for what the wedding films that we produce, right? Just our prices are usually out of the range of someone who's just graduated from college. Not always, but just in general. So, like, some, like, specific things like that you want to be paying attention to. What is her favorite TV show that she watches? Like, things like that. So things that we can connect with through our social media.
I don't know if I've ever known one of our bride's favorite TV shows.
You know what I'm saying? But, like, things like that where you'd be surprised,
I just,
like,
like,
when we post about watching The Bachelor with a glass of wine, right? A very certain, like, specific person out there is like, oh my gosh, that's what I do. Like, they're just like me, right? They love that. They love knowing those details about you. So the more that you can figure out or, like, think about, like, your ideal client in that way. Now, obviously, everyone's not the same, and not everyone likes the same TV shows or whatever. But the more specific you can get in those details.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. Very pointed answer. So our business coaches a year ago took us through a very specific exercise in defining who our ideal client was. And it was asking us the questions of, like, who is she? Where does she live? Where does she shop? How old is she? Who, like, what does she care about? Like, those things.
Straight to the point, please.
So those are the questions I would ask you to find your Mary Margaret. She's out there in the world. You kind of have to create her and then vet all of your inquiries that way. Okay, I'm just kidding, but kind of. That's serious. Okay, Megan.
It's not for your inquiries. You're vetting the way that you're speaking to that person. So your Instagram post, like, would this appeal to Mary Margaret? Would she be interested in this? Not like...
Yeah, that's true. If you get an inquiry, it's not like, is this Mary Margaret?
Right, like, oh, this girl doesn't like The Bachelor, she's out. No, it's not like that.
I think it's really funny that you keep talking about The Bachelor,
we
because I literally
we didn't watch The Bachelor this year. I know you watch it usually, though. Anyway.
No!
Okay.
Okay,
Megan Pettis, I'm gonna read it. Do you vet clients to ensure you're working with your ideal couples? Pre-booking questionnaire. If you do, how do you do this without scaring them off? Of course, the first step is attracting the ideal client, but for those few inquiries that inquire anyways.
Here's my answer. So so we do not send out a pre-client questionnaire. We send out the questionnaire after we've already talked to them. And I know a lot of people do this the opposite way, but, like, I said last week, I'll say this every time, I operate in a manner that I would want to be treated. Like, I literally think, like, past bride Ash, like, what would she care about, or what would, like, turn her off? And I operate in that way. That's my mindset in everything that we do. Okay. So, on our inquiry form, I have, I think, 6 questions, and the last 2 are optional. So, like, they do not have to fill them out in order to send an inquiry. And the last 2 questions are like, describing their ideal wedding day, so kind of telling me, like, what is their, like, plan for their wedding day. And then the one before that is, like, describing, like, what they actually, like, want out of their video, okay? So, 9 times out of 10, if they do not answer these questions, I already know that we're probably not going to book them because they're probably price shopping. But if they answer them, we're, like, 1 step down on the ruler, okay? So that's where I start. So every single person that inquires, they get an email from me, and it's the same. It says, you know, like, this is kind of how we operate. This is, like, this is why our films matter to us. And, like, here is our wedding guide, and, like, we would love to set up a call with you within the next week. Every single person that inquires gets that email. Okay, so if they respond and they're like, oh my gosh, we'd love to chat with you, then I schedule a Google Hangout. We talk to every single couple before we book them. I know some people don't do this, but this is how we do it because we run a personal brand and we want that connection with everyone. And we don't have an engagement session like photographers, so we will have no interaction before the wedding if we don't do this, okay? So these are why we do that. And then we get on the call.
She's very passionate about this, guys. This is like Ash's whole world here.
This is literally my whole job. We get on the call, we talk to them, we ask them all those personal questions about their story and how they got engaged and what they value, what they're looking for in their wedding film, all those things. We hang up. They email us and let us know they're going to book us, and then I send them a questionnaire. The questionnaire is very specific for me to blog their wedding posts because I want their words to tell their story, not necessarily my words kind of infiltrating what their story is. Does that make sense?
As far as like vetting them, it's very rare that we'll get all the way through like
all of that,
and then it be a bride that we just like are like, this is not right, like this is not gonna work. Like usually, again, just through all kind of like those different little like checks along the way, we can usually kind of tell before we even get to that point. Once we've got to that point, we've never, I don't think we've maybe one time we've like hung up a Skype call and been like, I don't care if they want to book us, like this isn't gonna work. It just doesn't happen very often. Again, not every single client you book can be your ideal client. Like it's just like a fact and reality. Like it would be great if that was possible, but I think it's safe to say like you can't plan on booking your perfect ideal client every single time. But you know, if someone's willing to book you, there's got to be a reason why they're willing to book you. And the more that you can obviously attract your ideal client, like the better it's going to be, the easier it's going to be to book, because you're not going to have to persuade them and like sell them on the value of you and what you have to offer. They'll already get it. And that's one of the things I would say is like, if we get people who go through that whole process, they answer all the questions, they talk to us on Skype, they answer, you know, they tell us about their lives, they tell us about all this stuff, and they want to book us, there's a reason that they want to book us. And
they've jumped through a lot of hoops to get to that point.
They've jumped through a lot of hoops. Yeah. And it's very rare they'll get to that point and they'll say like, actually, you know what? We don't really want to book you, right? We don't have to sell ourselves because they already kind of get, if they've gotten that far, they're seeing value somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So, yeah. But I would say, like, but for us also, like, being at a higher price point, that's changed, I think, over the years. If you're kind of just starting out and you're maybe at, like, a little bit lower price point, you might have obviously you run into more, like, price shoppers who are just trying to figure out. And that's where having the value, being able to distinguish yourself from the filmmaker down the road is really, really important. Because nobody can replicate who you are and your onlyness factor. But everybody, if you're only competing, I always say this, if you're only competing on the quality of your work, then the next thing that they're going to look at is price. And if you like, you don't want to only have quality of your work to be distinguishing you against somebody, right? You need to have something that's unique against you, so that they have like you know what, all these people are all the same price, all their work is pretty comparable, but I want her because of X.
Right.
Whatever that is. Figure out what that is.
All right, so Brandon says, do you write blog posts or Facebook posts during the off season to get ahead and just have them ready to post throughout the year? This is a great question. Okay, so I would say that like our content creation calendar is very cyclical as far as like what's coming up. So in the off season, I write a lot of posts about educational things for filmmakers or educational things for brides. So that's kind of like pre-wedding season. Everyone's kind of preparing to either A, go into the wedding season as a bride, or B, go into the wedding season as a filmmaker. So you'll see a lot of posts geared towards those people as far as like creating timelines or writing notes or X, Y, and Z. In wedding season, it's a lot of weddings. It's a lot about us because I know kind of like year-round people are getting engaged. And so at any point when they hop on our website, I want them to know that who we are and kind of like what we're about. So we have a lot of personal posts in the wedding season, and then we have a lot of weddings in the wedding season. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm creating content ahead of time and like back or forward dating it. It's all very cyclical. So I have a specific like brain that I'm in pre-wedding season, a brain that I'm in wedding season, and then kind of like it just kind of like rotates.
Okay. I mean, if you are that type of person, and especially like I know you guys have like full-time jobs and stuff, and you need that, then there's nothing wrong with writing some blog posts like, okay, in
just think about April, who you're targeting.
Right, in April, I'm going to want a blog post about this. Like, I got some time, I'm going to write this now. Usually we're just like so happy to post it. We just post it anyway. But if that helps you to have like a couple backlog, like 4 or 5 maybe, that are kind of just like in reserve for whenever you need them, a slow week or a week where you're swamped at work and you don't have time to write extra blog posts and stuff, just so you have content to put out there, that's a good idea for sure. We don't really do that. as much. We don't plan that far ahead.
I would
but sometimes
say
you'll plan
if
a few
you-
weeks ahead or like a month ahead or something.
If you have a series going on and like, you know, say it's like a series like pre-wedding season, you're trying to like educate your brides and you have a series that's like going on, and it's easier for you to kind of like batch write those so that you know like they're getting this in this week, they're getting this the next week or whatever. That is awesome because then you have your content scheduled for like 5 weeks, which is awesome. So I guess it's really just kind of like evaluating like what works for you and kind of just like going for it.
Yep.
Okay.
We have some extra pro marketing tips from Matt Johnson in the
God.
comments. He says, these are the ones we should have just started with. The first tip for marketing off season is going to be buy a Mavic Air. Check. Then tell everyone you bought the Mavic Air.
Oh
and
gosh.
then
Ty, they can
book
read it.
everyone. So I need it to be stated out loud because this is just golden advice that everybody needs to be aware of.
Okay, so we'll come back to Ryan's question in just a minute. Let's answer Lindsay.
Girl, I got you.
Lindsay says, I know most of your business comes from word of mouth at this point, but are there any other unique avenues or connections with people that people are finding you with? This is a great question.
So wait, before you can I answer really quickly, then you can give specifics. So I would say our objective has always been, for like word of mouth obviously is important to us, but like I was saying earlier, our goal is to be getting inquiries coming from as many different places as possible. So we've been planting those seeds and casting those lines, right? As many different kind of like lines out in the water as we can possibly have, that are all still very intentional, but that way, because we don't want to just have one source of marketing, right? Word of mouth. If word of mouth was our only way of marketing, then as soon as we raise our prices, then all those brides that we had last year, they may be telling their friends who may not be able to pay for our new prices or whatever. Like you want to diversify your portfolio.
Okay, so I have 2 quick answers. One is, I mean, you already know this, but we do a same day edit, and then we show it, like, we don't show it. We put it on an iPad so everyone at the wedding can view. And we usually set it in an ideal location where we know the majority of the people that are at the wedding are going to see it. Whether that's like off to the side by the bar. Like we're not going to put it like dead center where people are going to knock drinks on it. But like, you know, the bar goes like this and like putting it on the side of the bar. Or on a cake table somewhere or somewhere that we know a lot of people are going to see it. I literally cannot tell you how many people have inquired with us or taken a business card, because we also leave a stack of business cards. I know people are like, oh, business cards, nobody uses those. Hey, it's one way that they can take something home from you.
Right.
So that's one way that we market.
And if you want to know how we do that specifically, we have a free guide that you can download.
Lindsay knows. Okay.
I'm not talking to her, I'm talking to everybody else.
And then the second way that we market is just Facebook, guys. We literally could spend a whole night talking about Facebook because
we might spend a whole night talking about
because
Facebook.
Facebook is the future. It is the future. You can reach so many people by posting a film online, putting $5 behind it. I cannot tell you, you can reach so many people. So those are our 2 like
this year. Those have been the
abnormal.
two like biggest things for us that have, I don't know if change is the right word, but like that we've sort of like honed in on.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some strategy to the Facebook thing. You can't just like put money behind any post and expect it to be really
refine
efficient.
your audience, have a pixel installed on your website, like all those things. We literally could talk about this all night long.
We might talk about that later.
Maybe we will talk about that.
If you'd be interested in that, leave it in the comments below. Seriously, let us know if that's something you'd want us to talk about, because I think, Ash, that you've really like honed in on the Facebook thing.
Thank
you. We
you.
got to a point now, every time we post a film, we have a whole strategy that we go through that involves posting the video on Facebook natively and putting X amount of dollars behind it, and we've almost like clockwork got booked, what would you say, 2 weddings, 3 weddings per
Facebook
ad, if not more, and probably 2 or 3 times in inquiries. So,
and if you think about
there's power behind it.
There are more people on Facebook than what you actually think, and it is like your friend of friend of friend that's going to see the film, depending on the audience that you target. So I always target like friends within this age group. So then like they see it.
Everybody wants Facebook.
Okay.
They want
it just like
about
guys.
Facebook.
Also, Facebook is prioritizing video right now. I know, like, whatever his name is that created Facebook released this whole thing and said, like, we're gonna, like, deprioritize business pages. Whatever. I'm still saying they are still prioritizing video, and it doesn't even matter if the person watches 4 seconds of your film. It still boosts your engagement if they watch it at all. Literally could talk about this all night.
We were going, okay, it's official. We're going to talk about it. I don't know when. I can't, maybe not next week. Maybe next week. You have to Stay like our page to find out. Okay, so we're gonna take like 1 or 2 more questions. We're right at 8 o'clock. We're gonna take a few more of these like gear questions because I have to answer at least one gear question, and then we're gonna hop off. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so if time allows, what Canon you guys are using for filming? We are getting ready to switch to Canon from Nikon. I was going to do 2 Mark IVs and 2 Mark IIIs for backups. Thank you in advance. Great question. Okay, so Canon camera lineup is very interesting right now. Okay.
Wait, the speed up version.
What?
The speedy version.
I haven't even started yet. How do you know what version I'm going with?
Because I already know.
Okay, so like anything else, there's always kind of like follow-up questions. So I would say that if you also do photography, then you're going to want it. Then yeah, the 5D Mark IV, the 5D Mark III, those are going to be your kind of like only options. The 5D Mark IV is a great camera. It has the dual pixel autofocus, which is like you touch on the screen where you want and it focuses. It's amazing. Some of the best in the business for that. The 5D Mark III has great color science. Canon in general has really great color science. However, the 4K in the 5D Mark IV is humongous. It uses a very inefficient codec, so you're gonna like literally it's unusable for weddings. You'd have to shoot like close to 1 terabyte of footage for weddings. I'm going to tell you a video you should go watch. So I just made a video recently about why I love the C100 for shooting weddings, which is the camera that we use. Ash, do you want to grab the C100? Oh, it's over there. I really wanted to see it, but that's okay.
She knows what a C100 is.
I know, but it looks really cool right now because it's all rigged out. So the C100 is... I'll link the video. You should go watch why I really love the C100. I think it's great. So what I would say to you is if you're doing photo and video and you're going to buy 4 cameras, I would say to go buy 2 C100s and 2 5D Mark IVs, or depending on what you need. Like if photo-wise, you could probably get away with just the 5D Mark III. The difference in photo quality between the 5D Mark III and the 5D Mark IV is pretty minimal. There's not a huge difference there. So, but the C100 offers a ton of really great options as far as video goes. So it's video specific, obviously. So you're gonna have to kind of weigh out your options. 4K in Canon just isn't really like a very feasible option right now, especially in the levels that you're talking. So personally, I would say C100 because we love the C100. This link will show you why. And yeah, sticking with Canon is great. The Canon color science is amazing, and that's what I would do personally. But if you want 2 5D Mark IVs and 2 5D Mark IIIs, that would also be a really great place to start. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you're going to be paying a lot of money for those 5D Mark IVs, and the video is going to be good. Like it looks really great coming out of the 5D Mark IV, and we have like Happy Camper Films. They use 5D Mark IVs, and it looks fantastic. But I don't know. I love the C100s, so I would combine the two, and that's what we did for a long time. We shot with C100, and then we had our photo cameras, and we used those too. So that's what I would say. Check that out.
All right. So last question.
Oh, you have a last question? Oh, we're also going to link the guide for the same day edit if anybody's interested in that. But wait, ask the question.
It's Dan's question.
Oh, Dan.
All the way at the bottom.
All the way at the top.
Oh.
Dan says, before starting out, guys, Dan was our groom, by the way.
Yes, he was.
Dan's the man. Dan, what's up, man? Hey, go green, go white. Okay. Before starting out, what do you guys recommend learning first? The ins and outs of a camera or your editing software? That is a really good question. So I would say, personally, I think that learning the ins and outs of the camera is probably going to be your best bet. When it comes to editing, especially for weddings, the ins and outs of the editing software aren't nearly as important. A lot of what you're doing is you're making straight cuts. The like editing theory and kind of like your editing, what's the right word? Like strategy in sort of like the way that you approach editing is more of a mental game than it is like an actual technical game. Obviously, learning the technical side of editing as far as like hotkeys and like all that sort of stuff, that will make things easier kind of as you go. But I think that but you really need to have solid footage and you need to have the right footage in order to make anything with editing, right? Like you need to, if you have really shaky footage that's blown out and doesn't look good and the white balance is all off, even if you're an amazing editor, there's not really anything you can do to save that. So I would say learn the ins and outs of your camera, learn how to shoot technically very sound, and learn the ins and outs of storytelling in camera. And that'll make your editing so much easier. And then as you go, it's kind of just it's sort of a trial by fire kind of thing. You'll figure out all the buttons and how to make things faster and how to organize stuff. And that's the majority of like what editing is anyway. And there's tons and tons of great tutorials on YouTube that you can learn like the basics of audio editing and color and those types of things. As long as you have like just a basic understanding, you can make a really good film. But again, if you're starting with really bad footage and you don't have the right footage, you're gonna have a hard time making a great film. So that's what I would say. Figure out that first.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, let's
guys.
see. Is there any more questions? All right, one last question here. We made the jump to Sony A7S2s for low light. What's your take on Sonys? I think that Sonys are great. I think you can make an amazing film with any camera. I always say this. I think that even though I love talking about gear, I think that we overemphasize gear way too much as wedding filmmakers sort of like in general.
It's kind of like it's like having an ego. Like sometimes I think people talk about gear as like having an ego. It's kind of like pride.
But the A7S2 is a great camera. You can get amazing quality out of it. With every camera, there's workarounds, things you have to figure out how to deal with. The A7S2 is amazing low light, great 4K image, but it has some overheating issues and the battery life isn't super great. So that's, not ideal. But you can make amazing images with Sony cameras. You just need to learn the camera,
body.
right?
Yeah.
So I would say that I prefer the skin tones from Canon cameras. I've seen some amazing looking films coming out of Sony cameras. You just got to learn how to work with your equipment. So
yeah,
that's what I'll say about that. Two other things I'm gonna link in the bio is I'm gonna have Ash drop links in here for if you're interested in seeing all the gear that we use. Now that I just said gear is not important, if you want to see all of our gear, we'll link to our kit page so you can go literally see everything that we bring with us on a wedding day, and I update that pretty regularly. So.
If you scroll down to the end of our education page that I just linked, the kit is on
So it's
there.
all in there, from the cameras, the lenses, the bags, the audio, cards,
Everything.
batteries, literally everything is in there. So if you ever were curious about stuff that we use, that's in there. We're going to wrap it up now. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. We're going to be back next week, 7 o'clock. Tuesday, we should call this something. What is it going to be called?
Guys,
Harrington's Live.
If you have a good name for this, comment on my Instagram photo, my last Instagram photo.
Comment on my last Instagram photo of me and Ash and tell me, because I need more followers. Ash has lots of followers. Oh my gosh.
No, I'm just saying,
anyway,
if you want to be the prize person that names this shindig.
Whoa. Yes.
Why'd you say that?
You sound like you're going to say something else.
No.
Okay, so seriously, if you guys want to follow along and you want to see how we market our business on the internet, follow us on Instagram. That's like our main hub. Yep. It's linked right over here. Not linked, but it's over here.
Yeah, you can.
I'm very proud of my little bottom third thingy. But yeah, that's all we have for you guys tonight. We'll be back next week at the same time, 7 o'clock.
Same place.
Same place.
These chairs.